The Celestial Academy floated in the dark of space, perfectly between three different star systems. It was huge, with silver metal and glowing windows. It showed how different alien races could get along peacefully. Jake Morrison, a 22-year-old from Earth, still thought it was strange to be here. It had been 3 weeks since he arrived as the first exchange student from Earth, and he was still getting used to everything. He saw creatures in the hallways that he had only seen in his dreams as a kid watching science fiction movies. Some had tentacles, some had scales, and some didn't even have faces that could be seen. But they all had one thing in common: they didn't pay much attention to him. Jake pushed open the heavy doors to the cafeteria, and the usual wall of noise hit him. A lot of people were talking in languages that his translator chip had a hard time keeping up with. The smell was strange too. It was like a mix of foods from 100 different places. Some smelled sweet, others like burning rubber, and a few made him feel sick. He had learned to stay in the section that was safe for people, which was mostly just bland protein bars and something that tasted a little like chicken. He picked up his tray and looked around the room for a place to sit. At that point he saw her. She was sitting alone at a table in the back corner and was probably only 4 feet tall. Her body had a hard outer shell that shone purple in the bright lights of the cafeteria. Her 4 arms moved slowly as she ate, and her big compound eyes seemed to see everything around her. Jake had seen her kind before in the Academy's database. They were called Quellins, and they were insect-like creatures from a quiet planet on the outer rim. A lot of other students didn't pay much attention to them. In fact, most students seemed to go out of their way to avoid them. Tria was her name. Jake had heard someone say something about it in passing during orientation. She always sat alone in that same corner, and she always looked like she wanted to blend in with the walls. Jake found a seat a few tables away that was close enough to see but not so close that it would be strange. He opened his protein bar and tried not to look. But there was something about her that made him look. It could have been how alone she looked, or it could have been how she kept looking nervously at the door, as if she thought something bad would happen. And then it happened. 3 big people walked into the cafeteria, and the mood in the room changed right away. Students moved out of the way without being told to. People stopped talking and started whispering. Even the bigger alien species looked like they were getting smaller. Valorians. People had told Jake about them during his first week. They were built like tanks because they came from a planet with 3 times the gravity of Earth. Thick, scaly skin, strong muscles, and long tails that could probably break bones. Everyone knew that they were the best at the Academy. The 3 people who just walked and moved with the kind of confidence that comes from never being challenged. The leader was the biggest, and his scales were a dark red color that made Jake think of dried blood. Kron was written on his name tag. Jake saw them scan the cafeteria, obviously looking for something. Or someone. Their eyes fell on Tria. Jake's stomach sank. He'd seen this before in high school. That look of a predator, like how bullies would zero in on their prey. It seems to be the same for all species. The 3 Valorians went straight to Tria's table. She saw them coming. Her 4 arms stopped moving and her food was halfway to her mouth. Jake could see that her whole body was getting tense and her big eyes were getting even bigger. "Get out of the way," Kron said. It sounded like gravel being crushed when he spoke. "You're in our place." Tria didn't say anything. She didn't say anything. She started to gather her things with shaky hands. She picked up her tray and it shook as she tried to get up and leave as quickly as she could. But she wasn't quick enough. Kron's thick tail whipped out faster than Jake thought it could as Tria stood up. It hit the bottom of her tray and all of a sudden food was flying all over the place. There was purple liquid all over the floor. There was some kind of grain all over the place. A piece of something that looked like fruit rolled under a table nearby. Tria stood there, frozen, with her empty tray in her hand. "Oops," Kron said, and his 2 friends burst out laughing. It was a mean sound that was meant to make someone feel bad. "Looks like you made a mess. You better clean that up, bug." The word bug sounded like poison. As if she wasn't even a person. Just a bug that needs to be stepped on. Jake's fists were clenched under the table. His teeth hurt because he clenched his jaw so hard. He felt like he had to get up, walk over there, and do something. This wasn't okay. No matter what planet you were from, this kind of cruelty was wrong. But he didn't get up from his seat. He looked around the lunchroom. There were dozens of alien students watching. Some people looked uncomfortable, some looked away, and most just stared blankly. Like this was fun. Or worse, that this was just how things were meant to be. He had heard some people call it natural order. The strong are in charge of the weak. The predator species are at the top and everyone else is below them. Jake had fought with his roommate, a slug-like creature named Vorn, about it. "That's just how the galaxy works," Vorn had said. "Valorians are the top predators. Quellins are..." Well, they're animals that are hunted. It's biology. It's bullying, Jake had said back. Vorn had just shrugged with whatever passed for shoulders on his kind. Same thing. Jake felt sick when he saw Tria kneel down on the cold metal floor. Her delicate mandibles picked up bits of food one at a time. She moved slowly and carefully, but Jake could see that her hands were shaking. I could see how her eyes darted around looking for someone to help. Everyone stayed still. The Valorian stood over her and watched to make sure she picked up every last piece. Making sure that everyone in the cafeteria saw what happened when you were weak here. Jake wanted to turn away but he couldn't. He made himself watch. If Tria had to go through this, the least he could do was see it. Don't look away like everyone else. Tria quickly gathered up what food she could save and ran to the door when she was done. She moved quickly, keeping her head down to try to hide. Their eyes met for a split second as she walked by Jake's table. Jake felt like he had been punched in the gut when he saw the shame and pain on her face. She quickly looked away and kept going, almost running to the door. The Valorians sat down at the table they had claimed and talked and laughed as if nothing had happened. Like they hadn't just made someone look bad in front of the whole cafeteria. Jake looked down at the protein bar. He was no longer hungry. His hands were still shaking with rage and shame. He was ashamed because he had just sat there and done nothing. Because he was too scared, unsure, and new to this place to stand up for what was right. He thought the academy would be different from this. A place where different species learned to get along, work together, and look past their differences. It was just like every other place where bullies got away with it and good people didn't say anything. Jake got up, left his food on the table and walked out. He needed some fresh air. He had to think. He could still hear the Valorians laughing as the cafeteria doors closed behind him. Jake hoped things would get better for 2 weeks. They didn't. If anything, they got worse. He began to see a pattern. Tria would sneak into the cafeteria every day around lunch, find the most hidden corner she could, and try to eat as quickly as she could. She was trying to stay away from them. But Kron and his 2 Valerian friends always seemed to know exactly where she was. As if they had a radar for targets. Jake saw Kron take Tria's food right off her tray from across the room on Monday. She didn't fight back or even say anything. She sat there with her head down while Kron threw her food to his friends like it was a game. They laughed and threw it back and forth until the food fell on the floor. Then they left her with nothing and walked away. Jake saw them in the hallway on Tuesday as he was walking to his next class. Kron's huge hand was on Tria's shoulder, pushing her against the wall. Difficult. When her small body hit the metal, it made a noise that made Jake wince. The Valorians said something in their own language that made everyone laugh. Tria stayed against that wall until they left, not moving and hardly breathing. The water fountain was on Wednesday. They came while Tria was getting a drink. Kron pushed her head down and held it there while water splashed on her face and shell. She fought back, pushing against him with all 4 of her arms, but it was like pushing against a mountain. The other students in the hallway just kept going. Some people looked uncomfortable but no one stopped. That time Jake had begun to walk toward them. He got about 5 steps before a student who looked like a lizard stopped him. The student had hissed, "Don't be stupid. You'll only make it worse for both of you." Jake was frozen, not sure whether to move forward or stay still. When he finally made up his mind, the Valorians were gone, and Tria was on the floor, wet and shaking. He had helped her get up. At least they tried. But she had pulled away from him, embarrassed, and left without saying a word. That hurt more than if she had yelled at him. She didn't even think she would get help anymore. I didn't believe it. Jake lay in his bunk every night, staring at the ceiling and going over these times in his head. He was excited to go to the academy and proud to represent Earth. The mission brief was clear. Watch, learn, make friends, and show that humans want peace. Act like a diplomat. Don't make trouble. But no one told him that every day he would have to watch someone else suffer while he did nothing. He tried to get help from the police. That was Thursday morning before school. There was an office for station security near the docking bay. It was a sterile room with white walls and bored-looking officers from different species. Jake told them what he had seen. The security guard, who had 6 legs and too many eyes, listened with what Jake hoped was concern. "And you have seen physical violence?" the officer asked. "Yes." "Shoving, grabbing, and pushing her head into water? Did she get hurt? Injuries that have been recorded by a doctor?" Jake thought for a moment. "Well, no, but..." The officer cut in, "Then it's a social matter," and turned back to his screens. "Valorians are stronger than other people. It's just how they are. We don't mess with social hierarchies unless someone is hurt and needs medical help. We shouldn't control how species interact based on their roles in evolution." "So you're saying it's fine because he's bigger and stronger?" The officer's many eyes looked at Jake with something like pity. "Mr. Morrison, I'm saying that the universe doesn't run on human feelings. You're new here. Things will get easier for you." Jake felt more helpless than ever when he left that office. The system was not broken. This is how it was made. Something had changed in Jake by Thursday afternoon. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he could feel it growing inside him. Every time he saw Tria jump at a loud noise, every time she took the long way around the cafeteria to stay away from certain tables, and every time she made herself smaller and quieter, that feeling got stronger. Everything came together on Thursday at lunch. Jake was 3 tables away from Tria, close enough to see her but not so close that it was obvious he was watching. She was eating something that looked like soup and keeping her head down, not bothering anyone. Kron and his 2 friends came in. This time the cafeteria didn't get quiet. This was normal for everyone now. It was something that happened every day. They went right for her. This time, Kron didn't even say anything. He just walked up and knocked Tria's tray off the table with his backhand. It was violent, but it was normal. The tray spun through the air, sending soup flying in a wide arc. It landed on the floor in a puddle of orange liquid and pieces of food. Tria jumped up, surprised, her compound eyes wide open. "Eat it," Kron said. People in the cafeteria could hear him. He pointed to the mess he had just made on the floor. "Like the bug you are." At that point, the cafeteria was quiet. This was not the same. This was a line that had to be crossed. Tria stood still. Jake could see that her whole body was shaking. Her mandibles moved a little, as if she were trying to say something but couldn't. "I said eat," Kron said again, moving closer. "Or do you need help getting there?" The bright lights in the cafeteria made Tria's eyes shine. He realized it was tears. Or whatever Quellens had instead of crying. She looked around the room, her eyes darting around in a desperate search for someone to help. Nobody moved. A dozen different kinds of students, and they all just watched. A few people turned away. Some people were interested, like they were watching a nature show. After that, Tria sat down on the floor. He could hear his heart pounding in his ears. His muscles got tight, ready to move. This was not right. This was so wrong at its core that every part of him screamed at him to act. Tria's delicate mandibles reached for a piece of food on the floor. She moved slowly and felt ashamed. She shook all over. Jake was halfway out of his seat when he felt something on his arm. One of the Aquarians with blue tentacles and big dark eyes who sat next to him had reached out and grabbed him. "Don't," the Aquarian said in a quiet voice. Jake's chip translated the voice, which was female. "I know what you're thinking. Don't do it." Jake said through clenched teeth, "I can't just sit here." "Yes, you can. You have to." The Aquarian's grip got stronger. "People are diplomats. Remember, you're here to build bridges? You're not fighters. You aren't made to fight Valorians. Kron will hurt you badly if you get involved, and then he'll hurt her even worse for getting you involved. This is how it works." Jake looked at her, then at Tria, who was now using her mandibles to pick up bits of food off the floor. Eating them for real. The cafeteria floor was cold metal and had hundreds of feet walk on it every day. She was eating food off of it. "That's crazy," Jake said. The Aquarian said sadly, "This is the galaxy. Please. Sit down." Jake sat down. But his hands were shaking. He was so angry that he thought his teeth might break. He could feel something hot and ugly building up in his chest, something he had never felt before. It was more than just anger. More than just frustration. He felt like a part of himself was being cut out and replaced with something sharp and dangerous. Tria cleaned up the food. Every single piece. Kron made sure of it by standing over her the whole time while his friends laughed and talked in their own language. Tria got up slowly when she was done. It looked like the humiliation had changed her body somehow, because her purple shell looked duller. This time she didn't run. She walked to the door with her head down, like someone who had given up. Her eyes met Jake's as she walked by his table. That face. Jake would see it in his dreams. It wasn't just hurt or shame. It was giving up. Accepting. She was saying, "I know you can't help me. This is my life now. No one can." Then she left. The Aquarian let go of Jake's hand. "I'm sorry you had to see that. Eventually it gets easier to watch." Jake said, "It shouldn't." The noise in the cafeteria slowly went back to normal. The students went back to eating and talking. Kron and his friends sat down at the table they had claimed, happy with their show. And Jake sat there, that awful hot feeling in his chest getting bigger, darker, and hungrier. There was one thing the Aquarian got wrong. It didn't get any easier to watch. It became harder. Jake had a knot in his stomach all weekend, and it was still there on Monday morning. He hadn't slept much because he kept thinking about what happened on Thursday. He couldn't get the picture of Tria eating off the floor while everyone watched out of his head. He kept thinking about what he should have done, what he could have said, and how he could have stopped it. But he didn't. He had been sitting there like everyone else. Jake chose to skip breakfast in his dorm and go straight to the cafeteria early. If he was there first, or if other students saw him sitting with Tria, Kron might change his mind. It was a small hope, but it was something. When he got there, the cafeteria was almost empty. There were only a few people up early, and Tria was sitting in her usual spot. She was already eating, and Jake knew right away why. She was in a hurry to finish before they got there. Trying to get in and out before the Valorians woke up. Good plan. But Jake could see how quickly she was eating and how her hands shook a little as she brought food to her mouth. Even when they weren't there, she was scared. They had gotten into her head. Jake picked up a protein bar and walked over to her table. They might be able to eat together. It might help if someone just sat with her. He got 3 steps away from the cafeteria doors before they slammed open. Kron and his 2 friends walked in like they owned the place. They were early, which was strange, and Jake's heart sank when he realized why. They had changed their plans. Even in the early morning, they were hunting her down, making sure she had no place to hide or time to eat in peace. Tria saw them right away. Her body stiffened up. She started to gather her tray in those quick, panicked movements, trying to get away before they got to her. Not fast enough. The 3 Valorians moved quickly, blocking her way out. In just a few seconds, they surrounded her table and boxed her in. There was no way to get out. Are you going somewhere, Bug? Kron's voice echoed in the almost empty cafeteria. It sounded even more scary without the crowd. Tria held her tray close to her chest and backed up until she hit the wall. Please, she said in a low voice. Jake's translator made her voice sound small and broken. I just want to eat. We're not done teaching you your place, Kron said angrily, moving closer. His shadow covered her small body. You think you can get away from us? Change your plans? We can find you anywhere on this station. One of Kron's friends picked up Tria's tray and threw it away. It fell to the floor, but this time Kron didn't make her pick it up. This time he had something else in mind. With one huge hand he grabbed Tria by the head. She raised her 4 arms to try to push him away, but it didn't work. Like a kid pushing on an adult. No. Tria's voice got louder in a panic. Kron slammed her head down on the table. The hit was terrible. Tria's body fell apart and she fell off the chair and hit the floor hard. Jake's blood ran cold when her shell cracked. Kron's foot hit her head before she could even try to get up. His boot was huge, at least twice the size of Tria's head. He pushed down on her, forcing her face against the cold metal floor. Eat, Bug, Kron said. He pushed down harder, and Jake could hear Tria making little noises of pain. Show everyone who you really are. Tell them why your kind will never be important. The other students in the cafeteria were frozen in place, horrified. But no one moved. Jake felt something break inside of him. Not break. Break. Like a dam that finally breaks because of too much stress. All those weeks of looking. There were all those times when he stayed quiet, acted like a diplomat, and listened to people tell him that this was just how things worked in the galaxy. That crack let everything in. His sight narrowed. He couldn't hear anything but a dull roar. His body moved before his mind did. He didn't remember deciding to move. I forgot I had crossed the cafeteria. He was standing by the door 1 second with a protein bar in his hand. The next second, his fist hit Kron's jaw with all the force he could muster. The Valorian's head turned quickly to the side. A little bit. Just enough to be noticed. Kron let go of Tria and slowly turned around. He saw Jake, and for a moment his reptilian face showed real surprise. Then he began to laugh. His 2 friends joined in as if this was the funniest thing they'd seen all week. The human. Kron's voice was full of disbelief and laughter. You hit me? Jake's hand hurt a lot. It felt like he had hit a brick wall. But he didn't back down. Don't bother her. Kron moved closer to Jake and looked him up and down like he was looking at a bug that was interesting. You're not even a prey species. Your planet has low gravity. You're weak and soft. You came here to smile and sign treaties, not to fight. His breath was hot and smelled like sulfur as he leaned in close. Sit down before you get hurt, diplomat. Even though his heart was racing, Jake's voice stayed steady. No. Kron's face went from funny to angry. Okay. The push came quickly. Kron's hand hit Jake's chest hard, like a battering ram. Jake flew back and his body hit the edge of a table. Pain shot through his ribs, sharp and hot. He thought something might break or give way. For a second his vision turned white. Stay down was the smart thing to do. Jake's brain was telling him to stay down in every logical way. He was not as good as them. Kron was bigger, stronger, and made for a world where Jake would be crushed flat by the weight of the world. He couldn't win this fight. But Jake still pushed himself up. His ribs hurt so much they screamed. He shook his hands as he held on to the table. He had bitten through his lip when he hit it and blood was dripping from it. But he stood up, looked Kron in the eye and said 5 words that changed everything. "Leave her alone," I said. The laughing stopped. Kron's face changed to one of confusion. "What are you doing?" "Stay down." Jake said again. "No." Kron's anger grew out of his confusion. Now his pride was hurt. In front of witnesses, a human, the weakest species at the academy, was going against him. That couldn't happen. Kron's fist hit like a freight train. Jake tried to get out of the way but he was too slow. The punch hit him on the side of the head and all of a sudden he was in the air again. He hit the floor hard, slid several feet and his mouth filled with the taste of copper. He heard a ringing in his ears. His vision was blurry. Everything hurt. Something inside him told him to get up. Get up. Jake's hands were on the cold floor. Blood dripped from his mouth and hit the metal. His body begged him to stay down, give up, and let the medics come and fix him up so he could forget about it. But when he looked up he saw Tria. She was still on the floor where Kron had left her, looking at Jake with those big compound eyes. Keeping an eye on him. Watching to see if he would give up like everyone else always did. Jake got up. There was no noise in the cafeteria now. More students had come because of the noise. They stood against the walls watching something they had never seen before. A person fighting a Valerian. It was like seeing a mouse fight a lion. Kron said, "You're crazy," but there was something different about his voice. "Not sure." "Why won't you stay down?" Jake spit blood on the ground. "That's not how we do things." "What?" "People," Jake said, his voice rough but clear. "We don't stay down." Kron yelled in anger and ran at them. Jake was ready this time. Not stronger, not faster, but ready. He learned about the history of his own species by watching nature documentaries as a child. Being the biggest or strongest didn't make humans the most important species on Earth. They had done it because they were too stubborn to give up. Jake dropped down and grabbed a food tray from a nearby table as Kron rushed forward. Jake raised the tray just enough to avoid the full force of Kron's huge arm as it swung down. The tray broke but Jake rolled to the side, stood up and grabbed a chair. Kron spun around, which was too fast for something that big, and hit the chair out of Jake's hand. Then his fist hit Jake's stomach, knocking the air out of his lungs. Jake bent over and gasped and Kron's knee hit him in the face. Jake hit the ground hard. His nose bled a lot. His vision got twice as bad, then 3 times as bad. His body screamed at him to stop, to give up, and that this was suicide. But he could still hear his grandfather's voice in his head. His grandfather fought in a war and came home broken but not defeated. "Jake, Morrison men never give up. It's not in our genes. You can beat us but you can't keep us down." Jake's hand touched a table leg. He used it to get up. Then even higher. His legs were shaking. He felt like his ribs were broken glass in his chest. But he stood.
Jake woke up slowly, his mind swimming through a thick fog. It hurt everywhere. He didn't feel the sharp, immediate pain of the fight. Instead, he felt a deep, throbbing ache that seemed to come from all over his body. He tried to move, but he quickly regretted it. His ribs hurt so much that he gasped. "Stay still," a voice that sounded like a robot said through his translator. "Your wounds are still healing." Jake's eyes finally got clear. He was in the medical bay, lying on a bed that made a soft humming sound. There was a kind of synthetic mesh around his torso that glowed blue. He could see bruises that had turned his skin purple and black through the semi-transparent material. Something like that was on his right hand, and when he touched his face, he felt more of the healing mesh on his nose and cheek. Jake recognized the creature sitting in a chair next to his bed from the security office. For arms, chitinous plating that looked like black armor, and mandibles that clicked when he talked. Varn, the head of security. A drachnid, if Jake's memory served him right. People knew them as fair but strict enforcers of the law at the station. "How long have I been gone?" Jake's voice sounded rough, like he had been eating sand. 14 hours, Varn said. His many eyes looked at Jake with such intensity that it made him feel uneasy. "The medical staff had to put you in an induced rest while they fixed the damage. You had a concussion, 3 broken ribs, a broken cheekbone, and bleeding inside your body. The Valerian could have killed you." "But he didn't," Jake said. "No, he did not." The question is why you hit him in the first place. Varn leaned forward, and all four of his arms crossed in what looked like the Drachnid version of crossed arms. Tell me what you mean. Jake took a deep breath, trying not to hurt his ribs. What's on your mind? All of it. Start from the start. Jake did. He told Varn about his first day in the cafeteria when he saw Kron knock Tria's tray to the floor. He talked about the weeks that followed when things got worse and worse.
The food that was taken.
The pushing in the hallways. Everyone watched as Tria had to eat off the floor. I told them about it, Jake said, looking Varn in the eye. I came to your office. I told the officer on duty what was going on. And you were told it was a social issue, Varn said. I've read the report. Okay. A matter of society. Jake's voice was full of bitterness. So, I kept watching it happen. Every day. And no one did anything because that's just how things work around here. The weak can do whatever they want to the strong. That's too simple. Is it? Jake cut in. That's how it looked from where I was sitting. Kron was hurting her. And this morning, he put his foot on her head and pushed her face into the floor. He told her to show everyone what she really was, like she was nothing. Like she wasn't even a person. Varn was quiet for a bit. So, you went after a Valerian. A type of life that developed on a world with a lot of gravity. A type of animal that could tear you in half. His mandibles clicked, which could have meant he was confused or didn't believe what he was hearing. You're a person. Your kind is known for being diplomatic and finding ways to settle things peacefully. You're weak. Yes, emotionally, but not physically strong. Why would you do something so? He searched for the word. Suicidal? Jake laughed at that, but then he winced right away because pain shot through his ribs. Ow. Don't make me laugh, okay? And you don't know much about people, do you? I know enough. I read your file on your species. World with light gravity. No weapons made by nature. Not as strong as most species that travel through space. As Earth's first diplomat, your job is to build bridges and, Jake said firmly, that file isn't complete. Very incomplete. The door to the medical bay slid open before Varn could answer. 3 more officials came in, and they were all from different species. One looked like a jellyfish floating in the air, another was made of crystals and didn't look much like a person, and the third had green scales all over it. They stood around Jake's bed, and Varn told him that they were the inquiry board. This is a formal investigation, the jellyfish-like creature said in a voice that was surprisingly deep. A person attacked a Valerian. This has never happened before. We need to know what happened and why. I already told Chief Varn. Tell us, the crystal being said. Everything. And we want to learn something. You knew you couldn't win that fight. You knew the Valerian was tougher, faster, and stronger. Why did you attack? Jake lay back on the bed and thought about what to say. This was it. The moment when he could either help them understand or confirm everything they thought about people being weak, emotional, and not cut out for life in space. Jake started by saying, let me tell you about people. We live on a planet called Earth. There is a lot of water, and the temperatures are pretty comfortable. When you look at the numbers, we do seem weak. No claws, no fangs, no armor, and no poison. Many animals on Earth could easily kill us. Exactly, Varn said. So why? But here's something your files probably didn't say. People are hunters who keep going. Do you know what that means? Jake looked around at the people who were blank. It means we evolved to chase prey over long distances until it literally fell over from exhaustion. Some animals on Earth could run faster than us, were stronger than us, and could kill us in a fight. But we would follow them for hours. Sometimes days. Just keep going, keep chasing, and never stop. The prey would run until it couldn't run anymore, until its body gave out. Then we would catch it. The members of the board looked at each other. The scaled official typed something into a datapad. Jake went on. We also have the highest pain tolerance of any species you've probably met. We had to. Your body is going to hurt after 8 hours of chasing prey in the hot sun. Your feet will get blisters. Your muscles will hurt. But you keep going anyway. That's how people act. We keep going. This is interesting biology, the jellyfish said slowly. But how does it fit with? I'm getting there, Jake said. Humans also did something that no other species on Earth could do. We took wolves, which are apex predators and dangerous pack hunters, and made them pets. Made them friends.
Dogs.
We did the same thing with cats, horses, and even birds of prey. We connect with things. It's built into us. We can connect with anything. And what do we do when we've decided to protect something we've grown close to? Jake's voice got harder. We turn into something else. He moved in bed, not caring about the pain. You want to know why I hit Kron? Because I got close to Tria. Not in a romantic way, and not even as close friends. But I saw her in pain, and my human brain told me, that's part of my pack now. I keep my pack safe. And when something threatens my pack, all that evolution kicks in. The hunter, who never gives up. The pain tolerance that lets us keep going when we should be down. The group mentality that says we will protect each other at all costs. The room was now completely still. Everyone in the room was looking at Jake. Varn said quietly, "You couldn't win that fight." Winning wasn't the point, Jake said. The point was that he needed to know that someone would stand up to him. That Tria was no longer by herself. That what he was doing would have consequences. And yes, I couldn't beat him in a fair fight. But I could make sure he knew that hurting her would cost him something. I could make sure he knew that he would have to go through me first if he wanted to keep bothering her.
All the time.
I'd get back up again. Every time. The crystal being asked, "Even if it killed you?" Jake looked it in the eye. "We don't give up. It's not in our code." It took a week for the doctors to give Jake the okay to go back to school. The healing mesh had done its job, knitting broken bones back together and fixing damaged tissue with technology that Earth doctors would have thought was a miracle. But Jake could still feel the ghost of those injuries, a dull reminder that his body had been through something it wasn't meant to go through. When he walked into the cafeteria for lunch, that was the first real test. People stopped talking in the middle of a sentence when Jake walked in. Many alien faces looked at him. The huge room, which was usually full of the noise of 100 different species eating and talking, became almost completely quiet. Jake could feel everyone looking at him, like they were looking at a specimen under a microscope. Jake thought about turning around and leaving for a second. He didn't want this kind of attention at all. But then he saw her. Tria was at a table in the middle of the cafeteria. Not in a back corner where she used to try to hide. Not hidden away near the exits so you can get out quickly. She was right in the middle, where everyone could see her. When she saw Jake, she waved with one of her forearms. Jake felt something warm bloom in his chest with that simple gesture. He walked over to her table, knowing that all the other students in the cafeteria were watching him. When he sat down across from Tria, the normal noise slowly came back, but it was quieter than usual. Tria asked, "How are you?" The translator made her clicking voice sound like she was really worried. Jake said, "Sore. But still alive." "What about you?" "Better," she said, and the way she held herself was different. She stood up straighter. Her eyes didn't move around nervously like they used to. Actually much better.
"Thanks. For what you did."
No one has ever stood up like that. Not for me. No, Quellen. Jake didn't like how thankful he was. A long time ago, someone should have done it. "I'm sorry I waited so long." "You didn't wait," Tria said with authority. "You've been here for 3 weeks. You saw what was going on and did something about it. That's more than what anyone else has done since I've been at this academy for 2 years. 2 years. Jake got sick just thinking about it. The system had done nothing after 2 years of daily torture. "Things are different now," Tria said again. She waved her hand around the cafeteria. "Have you seen?" Jake looked around. Yes, students were watching them, but not with the cold indifference he was used to. A few people looked curious. Some people looked. Was that respect? He saw 3 Valorians near the far wall. They were not Kron's group, but they were definitely not looking in Jake's direction. Jake began to understand what Tria meant in the weeks that followed. Things had really changed. It began small. One afternoon in the library, a tiny Grexian student, only 3 feet tall and covered in fuzzy purple fur, came up to Jake. The creature seemed nervous as it wrung its small hands together. The Grexian squeaked. Excuse me. Is this Jake? The person? Yeah, that's me. Hello, I'm Pip.
I wanted to talk to you about something.
Pip looked around as if he were looking for people who were listening in. Is what they're saying true? That people kept predators as pets? Like, real predators that could kill you? Jake had to smile. Yes, it's true. We tamed wolves thousands of years ago. They became dogs. We also have cats, which are smaller hunters. Some people even have snakes or spiders as pets. Pip's eyes got big with surprise. But why? Why would you want something that could hurt you in your home? Jake said, once we connect with something, we don't see it as dangerous anymore. We think of it as a member of our family, and we'll do everything we can to keep our family safe.
People heard about that talk.
Other students soon started to talk to Jake. Quellen, who was nervous, asked if he would be willing to teach a self-defense class for smaller species. A crystal being wanted to learn more about the past of humans. Some of the mid-tier species, which weren't top predators or prey, began to sit at tables near Jake during lunch, as if being close to him would keep them safe. The results of the inquiry board were made public. The station now knew that people weren't the weak diplomats that everyone thought they were. The report talked about how humans evolved, how they hunted by persistence, how much pain they could handle, and how they protected themselves. But it also told the story of what had happened to Tria, the months of being abused, the planned cruelty, and how the system hadn't been able to stop it. Kron and his two friends had been kicked out of the academy. They were sent back to their home world in shame. The academy had, however, put in place new rules that were more important. There is no tolerance for bullying, no matter what species or natural hierarchy it is. Regular check-ins with students from at-risk groups. Systems for reporting things without giving your name. A lot of it was based on rules from schools on Earth, which is funny. But the real change was more subtle. It was how students acted in the hallways. How smaller species stopped pushing themselves against walls when bigger species walked by. The cafeteria had become more mixed, with different species sitting at the same tables instead of being separated by size and power. 3 weeks after Jake went back to school, he saw something one morning that showed how much had changed. A big Krellian student was walking toward a table where a small amphibious student was sitting alone. Krellians are a type of heavy-built reptile that isn't as dangerous as Valorians, but is still strong. Jake knew that walk and that predatory look. The Krellian was going to start something. Jake got tense and was ready to get up. But then the Krellian looked around the cafeteria, as they always do. Those eyes fell on Jake. The Krellian stopped in the middle of a step, completely changed course, walked to a table on the other side of the room. Tria, who was sitting across from Jake, had seen it too.
They're scared of you now, she said in a low voice.
Good, Jake said, keeping an eye on the Krellian, who was very clearly not looking at them. Maybe they should have been all along. Tria said, that's not what I thought you would say. Most diplomats would say something like, let's work together for peace. Jake said, I'm still a diplomat. But I learned something in the last few weeks. Peace isn't always about everyone holding hands and singing. Sometimes, making sure bullies know there are consequences is the best way to keep the peace. Real consequences. Jake sat down that night in his room to write a letter home. He had been planning to do it for days but kept putting it off. It seemed like the right time now. He turned on the recording device, and his face showed up on the small screen. Hey everyone back home, Jake said. I know it's been a while since I last wrote. Things have been hard here at the academy. Don't worry, I'm fine now. But I want to tell you what happened because I think it's important. He spent the next few minutes talking about what happened with Tria, the fight with Kron, and everything that came after. His parents would probably be very upset. The diplomatic corps would definitely have some harsh things to say to him. Jake didn't care, though. Jake went on. This is what I learned.
People don't want to fight.
We are happy to be friendly, diplomatic, and work with everyone. That's real. That's really us. But the galaxy forgot about us, or maybe it never knew us at all. He stopped for a moment to think about what he wanted to say next. His ribs still hurt from the injury. We're also the kind of people who looked at wolves, which could kill us, and said, I'm going to make you love me. We did it. We are the species that evolved to chase prey until it fell over from exhaustion, Not because we were stronger or faster, but because we just wouldn't give up. We are the species that connects with everything around us, and when something we care about is in danger, we change. Something bad. Jake looked at a picture on his desk. It was of him, Tria, and a few other students from just yesterday. Everyone was happy or doing something else that their species did instead of smiling. Jake said, "The Valorians thought humans were weak. Maybe we are physically similar to them, but they didn't get that strength isn't just about